So hello guys, in the previous lecture we saw how our traditional IT infrastructure used to be, and we saw what were the problems we were facing as the process of traditional IT infrastructure. Now in this lecture we will see how cloud computing solves the problems which we were facing in the traditional IT infrastructure. Okay, so let's see. So first let's see what is cloud computing. See, cloud computing is on-demand delivery of compute power. So cloud computing is on-demand delivery of compute power, database, storage, application, and other IT resources. What does mean by on-demand? On-demand means like the IT resources like the server, storage capacity, network, bandwidth, all these things are just a click away. You need to only access the public cloud like AWS, Azure, or GCP. Okay, and from there you can have your account and then create your resources as required. And one of the benefit of cloud computing is that they have a pay as you go pricing model. Pay as you go pricing model. So what does mean by pay as you go pricing model? So the meaning of pay as you go pricing is that since the time you purchase the resources, you are only going to be billed for that amount of time for which you have utilized the resources. Okay, not that if you have not used the resources, then you will not be charged. Like if you create a Lambda function, then you will only be charged for the time for the requests which are made to Lambda function. Else you will not be charged for the Lambda. Let's take an example of EC2 instance. So suppose you have temporary workload and you want to run some computation on your EC2. So you can go for spot instances and you can do your task, and then either you can pause it, then you will not be charged, or you can terminate it, then you will not be charged. So what's the meaning of that? So if you utilize it, suppose for 2 or 3 days for some computation, then you will only be charged for that 2 or 3 days. In fact, it is per minute basis. Per minute you will be charged. Okay. So if you utilize for 1 hour 57 minutes, then you will be charged for 1 hour 57 minutes only. So that's the flexibility with the pricing we have in case of cloud computing. Okay. Another thing is you can provision exactly the right type and size of computing resources you need. Okay. So suppose you have a requirement of 8 GB gigabits of RAM. Okay, and Windows operating system and quad core CPU or octa core CPU. Okay, so according to that, you can purchase the resources from the public cloud like AWS. Okay, so this is mean by that. You can access as many resources as you need almost instantly. Yes, because it's just a click away. Okay, so if you need suppose 100 servers in some minutes, so you can provision cloud formation. Okay, and in few minutes you will have hundreds of servers in a few minutes with the specification you have specified in the JSON document. So these I am telling you guys theoretically for now, but we will see these live on the console of AWS. Okay, so don't worry, right now we are covering the theory part, but we will do the live practical as well. Okay, the next simple way to access servers, storage, database, and a set of application service. You can all manage your servers, storage, and databases, and whatever application service you are using from the dashboard of AWS, or you can use Cloud Development Kit, or you can use AWS CLI. Okay, so these are the three you can manage all your resources. So this is telling about Amazon Web Service owns and maintain network connected required for these application service while you provision and use what you need via web application. Okay. So AWS console is what? It is a web application only. Okay. And from that web application, you can see how many, what kind of resources how many resources and what are their capabilities and functionalities, and according to them you can choose or tailor to your needs and purchase them. Okay, this is basically telling about that. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So as we discussed in the previous lecture, we used to have our office or our home or our garage, okay, in which we used to store our servers, our storage devices, and then provide maintenance and then provide cooling capacity and then all those things. But that was not feasible as the business grows out, scale out. Okay. So that's why we shifted from office to cloud. Okay. In the cloud, if you want one server, you can have one server. If you want two server, you can have two server. If you want three or more or any number of server or any number of any amount of space you require, you can use S3 storage, okay, or any database you require, relational database or NoSQL database like MongoDB, okay, so you can use over the cloud. Next, I'm just going to tell you that it's not that we are not using cloud. We are already using the cloud. Some of the examples of those are like one email service like Gmail. So Gmail you have been using since long back, and it is a cloud service. It is a software as a service. Okay. So it's Gmail. So it is an email cloud service. You don't manage anything. You don't manage the servers on which Gmail service is running. You don't manage the storage, you don't manage the application, you don't manage anything. You only use Gmail. Okay. So it's a cloud service and you only pay for your emails. Okay. And up to 15 GB, you are already aware that it is free. Next is Dropbox. If you want to Dropbox or Google Drive, if you want to store something, then you are not managing the storage devices to store that. You are just using it for storing your things. Okay. So these are also cloud service. So it is a cloud storage service. Dropbox, as I might tell you, it is originally built on AWS. Okay. And another, you must be using Netflix for viewing cinema like web series or movies or anything. So it's also a cloud service. Okay. Built on AWS video on demand. And now let's see the deployment model of the cloud. Now, what do you mean by deployment model? Like how the cloud is being used. So we have three models. Okay. The first one is private cloud, whose example is RackSack. So RackSack has their own infrastructure of server, storage device, networking, and everything, and they have their own private cloud. Like no one outside of the organization of Rackspace can access that cloud environment or that IT infrastructure. Okay. Now, let's see. Cloud services used by single organization, as I tell, not exposed to the public, is known as private cloud. Okay. Complete control. Now, over the private cloud, since the organization itself has built all the servers, hardware, software, everything, so they have total control over the infrastructure. Okay, which is obvious. Security for sensitive applications. Obviously, like for very sensitive applications, private cloud is preferred. Okay, so you don't need any chance of leaking out of your information when you need a private cloud. Meet a specific, like some business needs maybe like they need private cloud. So that's why there's a concept of private. Okay, next comes public cloud. So for public cloud, three major players in the market is you already be knowing. It is Azure, Microsoft Azure, it is Google Cloud, and the next is AWS, which we are learning now. Okay, so these are the examples of public cloud. So what is public cloud? Cloud resources owned and operated by a third-party cloud service provider delivered over the internet. See, the hardware network and all the things which AWS is owning, you are not managing that, you are not paying for that, you are not doing, you are only coming and using their network. Okay. So it is owned by a third party, but anyone over the internet can use this resources. Okay, this is public cloud. Now we will see six advantages of cloud computing as well in the next slide. Now hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is nothing but the mixture of private cloud. Like organization is like they have for very sensitive applications or data, they have a private cloud infrastructure for their company. Okay, and for other stuff they are using public cloud as AWS or Google Cloud. Okay, so when there is a combination of private and public cloud, then it is known as hybrid cloud. Okay, so it is just an illustration of like private and public. So as I told, keep some servers on premises and extend some capabilities to the cloud. Okay, control over sensitive assets in your private infrastructure. Okay, flexibility and cost effectiveness of the public cloud. Okay, now let's see the five characteristics of cloud computing. Okay, first thing, you have on-demand self-service. On-demand self-service, you can anytime go to AWS, create your account, and start creating and using the resources. So it's an on-demand self-service. So see, user can provision resource set and use them without human interaction from service provider. You don't need anyone from AWS. You can go and create and use the resources as we have seen in some previous video. Okay. Now broad network access. Obviously, public cloud has a broad network access. Like AWS has the network all over the world. Okay, its availability zones, its regions, US East, US South. Okay, these are like all across the globe. Resources available over the network and can be accessed by diverse client platforms. Okay, that's multi-tenancy and resource pooling. Okay, what's the other advantage of cloud computing? It is multi-tenant. Like you are not the only one who are using the resources of cloud. Okay, there are other people also who are renting these resources. Okay, so multiple customers can share the same infrastructure and application with security and privacy. So even though they share the cloud infrastructure, they have the security and privacy they require for their business to function. Yeah. Next is multiple customers are serviced from the same physical resources. Okay, so there are times like for EC2 instances, until and unless you take dedicated instances, EC2 instances are sh- shared resources. Okay, among other customers, but you have the security and privacy that those all are taken care by AWS. Rapid elasticity and scalability. So you have rapid elasticity and scalability. You can automatically and quickly acquire and dispose resources when needed. Okay. Now, quickly and easily scale based on demand. You can, whenever you want to increase, whenever there is an increase in your demand, and you can increase the resources you want. Like if you want to, you have more load on the servers, then you can increase the number of servers. You require more storage capacity. You can increase the capacity of your S3. Okay, so it's like that. Measured service. Users is a measured. Users pay correctly for what they have used, as we have already discussed. Now let's see six advantages of cloud computing. Trade capital expenses for operation. This is one of the most significant advantage of cloud computing. See, in the traditional infrastructure, have we used to buy and plan the resources which we are going to, and then plan for the space and their maintenance, their cooling, and then order them and wait for them. Okay, so these all were capital expense. You need to pay for the resources beforehand of your running business. Okay, now in the case of cloud computing, you don't need to do that. You create the resources, you run your business, and as your business runs on these resources and uses these resources, okay, so you are only paying for the operational cost of these resources used by your business. Okay, so this is the thing. Pay on demand, don't own hardware, as we have already discussed. Reduce total cost of ownership. Obviously, we don't need to, we are, since we are not owning the hardware, so we have reduced total cost of ownership. Benefit from massive economies of scale. Now, what happens since AWS has such a wide and vast infrastructure network, so the price at which they supply their resources to us is very, very cost effective in terms when we see if we have gone and buy out those resources by ourselves and set up those. Okay, so this is massive economies of scale since a lot number of people are using that, and AWS has a large network infrastructure. So that's why we have benefit from massive economies of scale. Stop guessing capacity. Now you don't need to guess that you need this many servers, you need this hardware, you need this much maintenance, you need this much space. Okay, these are not required. As you scale out on your business, as your business grows, you can very easily scale the resources which are required by your business to run smoothly. Okay, scale based on actual measured users, increase speed and agility. Okay, stop spending money running and maintaining data centers. Go global in minutes. Leverage the AWS global infrastructure. Okay, now problem solved by the cloud. Okay, already we see there are lots of problems which have been solved by cloud. Now this is dedicated flexibility. Change resource time when needed. Okay, so you can suppose you are using spot instances for some temporary workload, but now you need to have workload which will run for 1 year or 2 years, then you can go for reserved instances or EC2 instances. Okay, or you can have your dedicated host. Okay. Cost effectiveness, pay as you go. So that we already discussed. Scalability, accommodate larger loads by making hardware stronger or additional. Okay, elasticity, ability to scale out and scale in when needed. Okay, this is like when you have less business and you have much less load on your system infrastructure, then you can scale in so that your cost can be optimized for cloud. And when in the peak times you have more load on the system, then you can scale out your resources. Okay, that is elasticity. High availability and fault tolerance. We have different availability zones and regions so that if anything happens to the any of the availability zone, then it will be taken care by other availability zone. Okay, and fault tolerance. Okay, agility. You can rapidly develop, test, and launch software